So could you go back and talk about the image that I had, and I'm no ecologist, Nick, but when the image that came to mind as you were talking about those check-in points were sort of lily pads, right? That point at which you could gather everybody together and check in for understanding as you, well, my metaphors are mixing now, as you jumped your way or walked your way through the course. What were some of those check-in points? What are some possible versions of those check-in points for students that you found useful, that you've seen happen and work well?
Yeah, I think they can be both formal and informal. So the informal ones are the, Teams message from a student, I need to chat for a little bit. Can I do that? And being open to that, that informality, that, working in a digital liminal space, if you like, to communicate with students. The other more formal things are, some people use quizzes that way, right? Everyone's probably pretty familiar with that as a check-in thing, just for knowledge checks. But you can also use things like minute papers. Almost on a weekly basis, you might want to do that as a way of getting students into reflecting on what they've learned through the week. I also use a couple of other tools. I use a thing called Peerwise to, in the past, didn't use it in the summer, but I've used it for first and second year courses. It's a tool where you train students how to write multiple choice questions. It's an open source free tool hosted in the University of Auckland. And what it's really good at is you can follow how students are, what the students are doing, essentially. You can see what they're working on, questions that they're writing, feedback that they're getting from other students. There's also kind of gamification built into that, so that you can upvote a question, students can vote for the most difficult question, you can earn badges. Tools like that provides some little kind of external motivation for students can be useful. And really, for me, that tool gives you a really good insight to what students are not understanding. They have to understand content pretty well before they can write a question with decent distractors, even if we've gone through training on how to do that. So you get a sense fairly quickly of where there might be some issues. Minute papers are really good for that kind of thing as well. You get, especially if you've got time for them to do that throughout the week, if you give them some space to do it. If you're working in an asynchronous world, it might be, here's a video, watch this pre-recorded short video, and then give me your thoughts, or what are the bits that are still the muddiest that you don't understand from this. And those kinds of check-ins do two things. They give you direct access to what students are knowing, but they also give you, they give the student a sense that you care about what they know and how they're experiencing it. In the same way that something like, maybe a mid-course feedback tool would, where you just ask a couple of questions with students about how things are going. If I'm doing synchronous classes, the first few minutes of every synchronous class is based around that idea of what's happening this week for people. What are you worried about? What's happening in your lives? What are things that we should know about? In the summer, we had riots starting in Detroit. I had a lot of Black students in my class who were concerned about family and friends and about what was happening just across the border from us. And so it became really important to incorporate that into the way that we talked about what was happening in the world. And making space for that was kind of critical to students being able to focus on what we were talking about. So being flexible and open enough to be able to change or to work with what's happening in the world around them, I think, is also important.